with another episode of our live question and answer series for expecting, new, and veteran parents. We've been doing this for a couple months, all summer long. I know a lot of you have joined each week, and I appreciate you coming back. Hopefully you've gotten a lot from our experts and our resources. And tonight is going to wrap up this series. We're going to take a break for a while. And we're looking forward to, we saved the best for last tonight. We'll be joined in just a moment by Muller. And Linda is an experienced registered nurse and has a busy private practice as an international lactation consultant. And she guides new moms and babies through breastfeeding, nutrition, wellness, and many other healthcare needs. She's also a mom and a grandmom, and here she is. Hi, Linda. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks so much for having me. This is very exciting.
Yeah. Thank you for making the time. I know that you are super busy and in demand, which is very good to hear, supporting lots of families. So I really appreciate you making the time and sharing everything you know and have learned with our audience. We have a lot of great questions to cover tonight.
Good. I'm ready for it.
Good. So before we dive into our questions, I just did a little intro for you. Anything you want families to know about you or why you do what you do?
So yes, I'm a mom and a grandmom of 3. I did breastfeed both my kids, very successful. My daughter, who has 3, when she had her first, had a little bit of difficulty. And I helped her out a little bit. And that was 6 years ago. And she said, Mom, I think you should do this. So registered nurse, worked at a school. I'm a certified school nurse, but I've been in pediatrics for many years. So love babies, love little ones. And it always has come very natural to me. I just love it. So that's what started it. Actually was something that my daughter suggested. And I looked it up at Paoli Hospital, did some clinicals there. Met some great people, and I had to take some courses, extra courses through Drexel, and took my international boards and became IBCLC certified. So now I've been doing it for about full-time for 3 years now.
Wonderful. Well, I'm very glad that you did. I'm sure the families are glad too. So, breastfeeding is natural. Doesn't mean that it comes naturally or easily, right? This is can be a really challenging thing for parents and for babies.
It is. It really is. And some moms, I feel bad, they struggle, and it's not their fault. Some moms do not make the milk. Other moms, it's a struggle for, as far as, the shape of their nipple, if they have something that's inverted, or if the baby just can't latch, if we have tongue ties. There's all kinds of situations that come up. So luckily, most insurance companies now cover for a board certified lactation consultant to come out and help these moms. Back in my day, we had some old ladies that were hippies who could call on, who were volunteers, and would make some suggestions, but you never had any home calls like we have now, which is great.
It's a little more structured now. Nothing against hippies, right? That's great. Well, we're glad that there's some regulation for it. And I obviously have my CLC, but what's required of an IBCLC is really, it's like the gold star of learning and education. You really have to go through very rigorous education and hands-on experience. So if families are wondering, like, what's the difference? Does it matter? You're really getting somebody who has seen it all and knows what they're talking about.
Absolutely. I was surprised. Honestly, already being a registered nurse, I was surprised how much education that I had to take 10 courses. And I did 1,000 clinical hours at Paoli Hospital. I really only needed to do 500, but at that time, they asked me to kind of hang on and stay on. And so I loved it. So I stayed. I've been offered some positions in clinicals, but honestly, going out to the moms and helping them, I think is more important because they already have the help in the hospital. So going to the homes and being able to see the whole environment. And everybody's a little bit more comfortable when they're in their own environment. So that's one of the best things about breastfeeding.
Who wants to lug a new baby out of the house?
Especially with COVID, nobody, exactly. Although when we were breastfeeding, we have this bubble, these babies are so protected because of all the antibodies and all the protection. So it's wonderful that, the mom or dad might get sick, but this baby's going to be protected from the breast milk.
Yeah. All right, awesome. Well, let's get into our questions, and I should say, I should say two things. If anybody's watching and has a question, please go ahead and put it in the chat. We'll make sure that we get to it. I do have a list here, but we'll take them all. And another thing that I love about you, I know there's much debate about breast is best, fed is best, whatever.
Sure.
You're here to help support the parents and the baby. So really any feeding questions you're open to taking tonight, even if it's not specifically breastfeeding related.
And I say that to the moms and the dads, partners, everyone. You know, I am IBCLC, yes, certified, but I'm also a registered nurse, and babies need to thrive, and mommies and everybody else needs to thrive. So I say yes to these parents and how wonderful they are if they see that breastfeeding is not working. You know, we have other options. We're lucky. Formulas are much better than they were years ago. And we all know breast is best, and the benefits are unbelievable, and it's free, and it's always warmed up. So, you know, yes, there's so many good benefits to it, but making sure that mommy and baby are thriving is the most important thing. Absolutely.
Wonderful. I just wanted to put that out there. Everybody feel free with any questions you have, and I love your style, obviously. Okay, so let's say that I'm about to have a baby, or I just had one. Our first question is, when I come home from the hospital, how often do I breastfeed? I know parents get lots of different numbers thrown at them.
You're basically going to breastfeed about 8 times in 24 hours. Whether you're breastfeeding or feeding, that's what you're going to be doing. You're going to be feeding every 2 to 3. And that's when the baby's going to need it. Some babies are a little sleepier, so we need to wake them up, especially during the day, and even at time in the early stages, because we want to make sure that they're gaining weight. We don't want to take them to the pediatrician and the pediatrician says 10% or more they've lost. We want to try and keep that weight gain on. So every 2 to 3 hours is the good range. And so basically it's about 8 feeds at least in a day.
And I think it also helps, and correct me if I'm wrong, for parents to know that you're setting the supply, right? So if you put in that frequency early on, there's a lot less to be done later, but it's not always going to be like that.
Babies are actually establishing it for you, which is great. A baby will help establish that milk supply in the beginning. So like I go to my children, for instance, my son wanted to eat every hour and a half. Well, he's 6'5" to this day. So he started off just wanting to eat all the time. Now, yes, he was my first one, so I didn't know as much, but I fed him on demand. I just fed him when he wanted to eat. And, you know, he grew beautifully. My daughter, on the other hand, you know, she was every 3 hours, and sometimes I had to wake her up and rouse her because she was so sleepy. And she was a great sleeper at night, where Michael, even for a long time, stayed up at night and wanted to eat at night. So they're all different, no matter if, you know, coming from the same parents, they're all different.
And we should probably try to not compare, right? From one to the next. Yeah. Not easy.
Although I do
all right, so we've got our frequency. When can a parent expect that frequency? I know every child's different, but if that feels overwhelming, is there a typical age or stage where that will drop to being spaced further apart?
So once they start gaining weight, and after 2 weeks when they get back to their birth weight, and they start really gaining weight. And I like to say when they get like little chin after chin after chin, when we see those double chins, chubby arms, chubby legs, that's when they start doing those nice stretches at nighttime. And you'll get 4, 5, 6 hour stretches at night. And that's when you hear the words from the pediatrician that you love hearing. Let them sleep at night. Go ahead and let them sleep. That, you know, will start happening. If they're not gaining the weight, we still need to wake them up. So it really depends on the baby. If the baby came a little early, if we have other factors, C-section babies take a little bit longer because the milk takes sometimes for the mom to come in a little bit longer. Sometimes things are a little bit more delayed. So again, it depends on the situation, but for the most part, it's usually after that 2 weeks. And I always tell moms, if you can just get through that first 2 weeks, I promise you life is going to be better after that.
And we all need light at the end of the tunnel.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So we know about our frequency, but now for each of these feeding, how long should baby be at breast?
So, you know, it depends. Some babies, we don't want babies to, if they're having trouble getting milk from, we don't want them to be on too long because they're going to waste a lot of energy. And if they're sucking and sucking and they're not getting anything, all of that fuel that they're using, they're not going to want to take the bottle then either. So we have to be careful. So again, situations. Some babies can feed for 10 minutes and some babies can feed for 30 minutes and 40 minutes. So in the beginning, some moms are like, oh my gosh, I fed for almost an hour and now it's time to feed again. Well, yes. And that's what happens the first couple weeks. But then there's some moms that, especially second, third, fourth time moms, their milk is established and it comes in quicker. So their feeds are shorter. And of course too, when it's the first baby, we don't know what we're doing. Both of us are learning. The baby's learning how to suck. Mom is learning how to breastfeed. So then when the second baby comes, you already know how to breastfeed. We're just teaching the baby. So life is a lot easier too.
For sure. Okay. And then how about position? What's the best position to feed my baby in? And I imagine best is going to vary from
absolutely.
Baby.
And again, I go back to my kids. So my left side would get really sore, and my son had trouble with the left side. And now that I think about it, there's something called torticollis, which when babies have like a very stiff neck, and they can get PT now and chiropractic, they can get taken care of right away. But it's how they are in utero. And it's just like if we slept funny and we slept, our neck was stiff. It's the same type of thing. So he probably had that and didn't realize it. He was stiff. So his left side, when I would cross cradle, which is the most comfortable position and the one that most moms go right to, he wouldn't take it. So I did the sideline position. And the sideline position is one of my favorite positions, especially for new moms, because you can see the latch. You can see it better. The milk is flowing easier. It's just a nice latch. You can see that the bottom lip is out and it's pouting. You actually can see the juiciness. You can see that milk. So it's nice because we can see that he's getting it or she's getting it, which is, is what we always wonder too. How much are they getting? Are they getting enough? That's one of the questions I get all the time.
Gotcha. Okay. But would you say just experiment if it doesn't feel comfortable or you can't see?
Yeah.
There are definitely lots of different positions to try.
Sideline is one. A lot of moms, once they have a C-section, because their bellies are a little sore because they've had abdominal surgery, the football hold, and it is exactly like a football. That position is really nice. The thing all about positioning and latching is you have to make sure you have support. So there's something out there called a breast friend, which is one of my favorite things right now. It's better than the boppy and everything else that you see there on the market because it's very firm. So the baby is going to sit there and not move. And it also has a clip for the moms, and it's very adjustable. So if you're swollen from a C-section, or even just having the baby from even a vaginal, you can adjust it. And it's not going to turn all around like a boppy does. And the boppies are good.
You're going to pull away with your baby sinking in the hole.
Yeah, absolutely. And the boppies are good though for when they do the tummy time. That's when the boppies are good. We do practice with tummy time. But the positioning is important. And for a baby to be, we want a baby to be parallel. So we want them to be parallel to your chest, skin to skin. I tell moms, just take your shirts right off. Because the more skin we have with yourself and the skin with the baby, just keep the diaper on the baby, the better the feed, the quicker the feed. They're going to open up more. They're going to stay awake. They're not going to be as warm. Because with the hormones, the moms are raging right now. They're warm. So baby's going to feel all that warmth. It's like you already have a blanket on the baby because of your warmth. So strip them down. They're going to have a better feed in the beginning and try different positions. The Latch League Foundation has a great illustration of all different positions. So that's a good site to go on for moms to look at and try different positions. There's also another position where you're actually sitting the baby upright. If we have a baby that has a little GERD or a little reflux, that's a nice position because you're keeping the baby upright. And some babies love it. Some moms find it awkward. So whatever's going to be the best fit, you just have to make sure you have good elbow support, that your neck and your shoulders are relaxed, that you're not tense and stiff. And then the support's really, really going to be your most,
And
best.
I'm a tiny person, so I needed a
Yeah.
nursing stool under my feet, or my feet were dangling and my back was killing me. And my son, so I had oversupply, which I don't know that we'll get to that tonight, but I was basically drowning him. So we had to do more of the laid back nursing, which was super helpful, so that gravity kind of worked for him rather than against him. And he was much more organized at feeding. I didn't understand this back then, but I've learned more since. If his feet were pressing against something, for example, the arm of the couch. So if we were in the center and his feet weren't pressing on anything, he was kind of a hot mess. But anytime I'd sit on the end, do you find that to be a thing? Babies feel more grounded if their feet are up against something?
Sometimes they feel better if their feet are up against something, and sometimes they're better when they do side lying and their feet can be free and they can kick and their hands can be free. So
that's so variable.
And I've seen both, and it depends on the babies. But what you did though was perfect. If you have an oversupply, we always want moms to lay back. If you have a letdown that's coming out so fast, babies can not thrive then when we have oversupply. People don't understand that, but what happens is when the letdown, the milk ejection reflex, that Muller, squirts out so fast, the babies are like gulp, 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 and they're trying to handle it. And some of them don't want to let go because they love it, but then they spit up right away afterwards, and they're losing all of that. So I had a mom one time that her supply was so plentiful that baby was still on the low percentile. We couldn't figure out what was going on, even though she had such a great supply. And this little one would try to handle all of it, but then she'd spit up so much afterwards. So we actually, when she felt the letdown, we would get a towel, which, you feel terrible because it's like liquid gold.
Yeah.
Now they have something called a haka, which is nice, and you can stick it right there. But when the letdown would come, we would let it all come out and then put her back on, and then she started gaining and she was in a better percentile. So there's, all kinds of tricks. And everybody's different, we're all...
That's what makes this so hard to figure out on your own, is that everybody's different. So if you only have your own situation as your point of reference, that's what's great about having a support person like yourself, is you've seen it all. So you can say, hey, try this. Absolutely. Or, I've seen it get fixed doing this.
Yeah.
Really, really helpful for families. Okay, so that's sort of getting us started. When we come home, how often do we do it? What position should we use? All of that. I think one of the biggest concerns of parents that are nursing is, I'm worried I'm not making enough milk, or how do I know if my baby's getting enough milk? So what do you say to moms when they're asking that? And I would love to follow that up with, what's the ratio of how many moms are worried about that versus how often it's actually a problem?
Yeah. And we do have a lot of moms that are so worried about it that they go out and they buy scales because they want to monitor how much intake. And I understand. I didn't have that luxury when I was younger, so I just assumed I go to the pediatrician, they're gaining weight, it's okay. But for a mom and anyone to really detect if there's an issue, what goes in must come out. So if you don't have 6 really good wet diapers, and when I say really good, they have to be saturated, good wet diapers throughout the day. And of course the poops, we want to see the poops in there too. Now as babies get a little older, especially breastfed babies, they might not go poop as much. And that's okay. We don't worry about that as much. But in the early stages, we need to get rid of all the meconium. Everything needs to come out. But what goes in must come out, especially the liquid. So if you don't see the pee, and if we're hardly getting any wet diapers, that there's something going on, that she's, he or she is not getting enough. It's a good indicator. So there's all kinds of tracks out there, apps where you can track now when you come home. So you can put in when you started to feed, when you ended feeding, and then also how many wet diapers or poops you had for the day too.
Awesome. And I know it may help moms to know not all scales are created equal. So if they are going the scale route, they do need one that's very, what's the word that you would use, can measure in very small increments and accurately to not give a wrong representation of what's going on.
We want to make sure that, you can see the ounces. And most scales, you can't see the ounces. So babies gain an average of anywhere from 5.5 to 8.5 ounces a week. So a larger baby, like one that gains a lot, usually gains about a pound every other week. Some pediatricians will tell the parents 1 ounce every day. but that's 7 ounces, and that's again more in the higher range. So 5.5 to 8.5 is a good range. So you have some babies who are 6 pounds, they're not going to gain 8.5 ounces the first week because their little belly is a little teeny nut inside there. It's the tiniest little thing. So they're not going to be able to hold that much because their belly's so little. So once they start to gain weight, then of course, then they'll start to gain a little bit more too.
Got it. And I know a lot of moms will try to pump to determine what they're making.
Yes.
But is it fair to say that's not always an accurate read because the pump does not necessarily do what a baby will do?
Absolutely. Babies will pull more out of you than a pump. Although the pumps right now that they have, the Spectra and the Medina, they're very good. They're very good hospital grade pumps. So we really do like these pumps that are out there. We used to have to go to the pump lady and rent them, but you don't need to do that anymore if you have the Spectra. And the insurance companies are paying for them, the first time moms, which is nice. I don't recommend that you borrow pumps from anybody. If somebody has the mechanism of the pump, but get your own phalanges and all the rest of the guts of it. The machine is okay itself, but I wouldn't borrow somebody else's pump. And there's hands-free pumps out there now too, the Willow and the LV, and they're okay for certain situations. The mom who had the oversupply, she needed the LV she chose the Willow for her position. So it was good for her because she could get a lot of milk out, but they're very expensive. The bags are expensive. And if you don't have a really good supply, you're not going to get the milk output that you would from your Spectra or your Medela. You have to be careful with pumping too. You only want to pump in the very early stages if needed. We don't really need to introduce babies to bottles until about anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks. So in the beginning, if you start to pump, if the baby's not gaining weight, that's okay, because we want to try and generate your milk and get your milk supply going. We want you to really flow like a faucet. We want it to really pour out. But if everything is good and this baby is gaining weight and your milk supply is plentiful, if you pump after a feed, you're going to produce more milk, because everything is all demand and supply. So the more we put to breast, the more we pump, the more milk we're going to make. So then you might have an oversupply, and then you're going to have another problem where you're going to have engorgement and you're going to be not feeling well at all. So you have to be careful. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So what can I eat when I'm breastfeeding? Should I stay away from dairy? And I know a lot of moms are probably wondering, should I stay away from caffeine? What about alcohol?
Right.
So you can speak to all of those things.
So
hot topics here.
Start with the fun part first. Let's start with the alcohol. So you can breastfeed, and then you can have a glass of wine or a glass of beer, and then your next feed in 2 hours to 3 hours, you'll be fine. But if you have a glass of wine or a glass of beer, and then you decide you want a second one, and the next feed you feel a little in the head, you can feel that little, like you're still having fun, you're going to have to pump and dump it. You can't give the baby that. So, I say 1 glass is good. Sometimes it's actually nice because it helps relax the mom too a little bit. And sometimes some people years ago used to say the brew in the beer will help with the milk supply. I've heard different research. Some say yes, some say no. There is certain foods though that will help. Want to help with your milk supply. If you like oatmeal, not the instant, but the actual oats, you will get some more milk production. So I make some oatmeal cookies, have oatmeal for breakfast, that's going to help. There's also something called fenugreek, which is an extract you can find in some of your Whole Foods, and you can sprinkle that on your salad. It's sort of like, like a cilantro, like you either acquire the taste, you like it, or you don't. But there's something that, research has been doing a lot on is ginger, and every ginger we can find it in actually ginger ale. You can get the ginger ale in your Whole Foods, the natural ginger ale. You can drink it, but that will help with bringing on the milk ejection reflex. It'll help with causing that production to really start. But you have to be careful, because if you had a C-section or if you've had a vaginal delivery and you've had any extensive bleeding or hemorrhaging, you don't want to have ginger because ginger's not a good thing. Or if you're on, if you're diabetic, you take diabetic medications or any heart medications, you want to stay away from ginger. So,
okay. I've never heard that, so I bet moms haven't either.
Yeah. So that's, that's been in the research and a lot of moms. There's a website too that if anybody wants to go on, where they can actually get recipes, and it's Mothers Overcoming Breastfeeding Issues, but it's MOBI motherhood.org, and you can get all kinds of recipes, and they have a whole list of what's good and what isn't good, because Thanksgiving we have our turkey, and we have rosemary, sage, parsley. That's all bad for breast milk.
Oh,
increases the supply. So peppermint is another thing that people have peppermint candy, and that's another thing that decreases supply. If somebody has allergies and they're taking
Thanksgiving and Christmas, terrible.
Bring out the ham or something else. I don't know. Just with all the dressing of the sage and rosemary in it.
Got it.
But if somebody has an allergy and they take Zyrtec clears us up, but it's also going to make the milk production not be as plentiful too. And
that would go for any decongestant, right?
Absolutely, like Sudafed, you want to stay away. Mucinex, all of them. There's a Dr. Hale who is a pharmacist that has a medication book that's fabulous. And another book that's good, or even his website, you can just look up the Dr. Hale for medications. And if there's something that you're concerned about too, or you can give me a call too.
Right, of course, that would be easier. Elaine says you're so informative, and she loves watching and listening to your videos. I'm glad you're here with us, Elaine. I agree. Okay, and what about dairy and then caffeine?
So, dairy's a funny thing. Everybody who thinks that their baby's gassy thinks it's dairy. So unless they have like frothy, green, mucousy poop, that baby's really miserable, it's not a dairy problem. It's just usually a little gas or irritation that they have. Unless I tell the moms, if you or the baby's dad is lactose intolerant, then I say watch. If you're not, you're okay, but watch what you eat. And I tell everybody this, everything is portion size, right? So don't have eggs with scrambled eggs with cheese and for breakfast. Don't have a grilled cheese that day too for lunch, and don't have lasagna with cheese on it for dinner. So watch your portions of.
Are you in my house?
Yeah, so just watch your portion size.
And it isn't always about eliminating, it's sometimes about limiting.
It's true, absolutely. And unless you yourself, somebody who's lactose intolerant is not going to eat it. But it's such a small percentage of babies that really do have a problem with lactose, a very, very small percentage. So the likelihood is you just have a baby that's got a little gas right now. We do see a lot of reflux in babies, but again, moms with oversupply or moms who have undersupply. So moms who have undersupply, you'll see a baby gagging when there's an undersupply. If you have a mom that has oversupply, you'll see the baby arching and then, spitting up right away. So again, with the oversupply, laying back or even side lying, different positions will help with that too. When you do breastfeed too, another thing with the oversupply, and this goes for everybody because it helps you get all the contents of the breast milk, is when you first breastfeed, you treat the first breast as that main meal. So if I'm going to start my baby on my right side, I'm going to keep my baby on my right side. You don't need to take that baby off to burp, because the more you take on and off, the more air that's going to get in the mouth. So we wait for baby to come off. When baby comes off, then the baby either needs a diaper change or a burp. So then we'll burp the baby, or sometimes babies poop in the middle of when we're breastfeeding, and then they might want to be changed then too. So then what they're doing is they're draining that whole breast. So they're getting all of the contents that they need, all the nutrition in that one breast. Then when it's time to burp and baby still seems like I'm a little hungry, Then we can go to the other side, which is a little dessert, just a little bit, and they'll be on for maybe 5 minutes, if that. And then the next feed, you'll start with the dessert then.
Got it.
But that's
so
how
there's a lot of back and forth about fore milk, hind milk, and I know the information and the thought keeps changing. So the current idea is what you just described. Let baby dictate, let them finish the first one, offer the second, and then start their next one.
Yeah, and the fore milk is, is light and it's watery. That's what they get in the very beginning. And then the hind milk is what is thicker and creamier. It's like ice cream. So that's another thing too. At nighttime, we never want babies to be fed by somebody else. Like mom's got to sleep. No, we don't want them to sleep, because in the very early stages, those nighttime feeds are so important, because the nighttime feeds is when the prolactin, which is a hormone, is at its highest. The prolactin is what makes the milk. So, and then mom's oxytocin, which is another hormone, is nice and relaxed. So those two combinations produce a lot of milk. So we really want moms to make sure that in the middle of the night, for this first couple weeks, they're not missing the feeds and that they're feeding. And then a lot of times the partners will say to me, well, how can I help? Well, that's when they can do that sideline position, because they can stay in bed and daddy can go get baby, take baby. Mom can keep her eyes closed the whole time and just put baby to breast and then watch. But dad can't get back in bed, because if he gets back in bed, then everybody falls asleep.
That was one of my questions about how partners can help, but let's come back to that at the end. And I do see a question in the chat. We will definitely get to that. What about the caffeine before we move on from this? Can we have our coffee and our chocolate, or what?
Yeah. And you can have a cup of coffee, and I'm a coffee drinker. Just stop it after 12 o'clock. Don't have it in the late afternoon, because it will affect the baby. So early morning's fine. Have your cup of coffee.
And you said a cup, so we're probably not also having cup after cup after cup.
Yeah. I would say, one nice mug of coffee in the morning's fine, but don't extend it. Some people will have a cup of coffee and they just kind of hang out with it for a while too, and that's okay. But after 12 o'clock, I just stop it, because you don't want caffeine in the system.
All right. So in our chat, parent wants to know, what about when baby cries at the breast? And I was going to also ask something similar about fussy, popping on, popping off, fatiguing and falling asleep before it's done. What about all those baby symptoms?
The babies can cry at the breast for a number of reasons. If baby has been given a bottle, babies are going to like the bottle better, because the bottle comes faster. Even though we say with breastfed babies, you always want to make sure you use the slow flow nipple, because that's more comparative to the breast. So if you have a baby that you're giving a bottle to, and then you want to put to the breast too, and we have this happen often, especially when moms go back to work, they might refuse the breast. If they refuse the breast, you can give them the bottle for a couple minutes and then try putting them on the breast. But there's no reason to get stressed, both of you. If it's not working and they're crying so much, just try it in another 5 minutes. Just leave it alone. Change the baby, go into a different room, put on some soothing music, just change your position. If you were trying sideline, go ahead and try football or do, cross cradle, anything different to try and change things. But when we are stressed, babies feel it, and then they become stressed. So
Which only makes mom more stressed to hear that, right? But it's important to recognize.
It's true. And, soft music, anything that's gonna, if you can put white noise on, anything to just try to make some, is gonna help.
And it's okay to we're just gonna be skin to skin.
Absolutely.
We're gonna force a feed right now. We're just gonna feed.
Exactly.
I know that was really hard for me when that was suggested to me. I wanted him to feed, and I wanted to get it right, and I wanted to nail it. And it was very hard for me to just be and take the focus off the feed happening, but he needed a reset or a reboot.
Right. And sometimes we're so, we're struggling because we're like, we got to get out the door. We got to do this, you got to feed because I only have a certain amount of time. They feel that. So, your feeds should be enjoyable. You have to try. They'll feel it with a bottle too. I mean, you just have to try and have it like a little, set that time aside to make it a little bit more of a relaxed time. So, but yeah, they do. Sometimes babies, even when I come and I try to put them on breast, they're refusing. And I say, okay, let's just try in 5 minutes. Sit and we'll talk for a little bit. Let's, so we do, and then we put back on, and usually 9 times out of 10 it works.
So I find obviously I help families with sleep, and when they ask, I can tell my baby's tired, but they're fighting it and they're crying and they're unhappy. They can get almost too tired to sleep, and crying can be a sleepy cue. So do you find that the same applies with feeding? It's possible that maybe baby was hungry a bit before, they didn't show any signals, or we didn't notice them because we're still learning their language, right? So does sometimes getting them on sooner help prevent or limit the crying at the breast?
It does. And I'll tell moms, even if that baby is sleeping 3 hours and 15 minutes during the day and they're sound asleep and you still want to get the dishes done and the wash put on, just wake them up. Because if they're overly hungry, they're going to be a bear. You're going to have trouble.
Because they get disorganized, right? And you need to be organized to coordinate that.
We need to get them on a schedule in the beginning and try and help them out and fill their bellies as much as we can during the day. Because the more you fill their bellies during the day, the sooner that you're going to have those 4 or 5 hour, 6 hour stretches at night. And they're going to gain the weight then. And that's what we want. And they're going to establish your milk supply. So, that's the key. That's what you want to do the whole time.
And just to clarify, when you say on a schedule, you're not suggesting we, make them wait X hours to eat because they have to be on a schedule. We're encouraging them, like, you need to do this really often because that's going to set us up for better success.
More is better than less when it comes to breastfeeding. So sometimes these babies, not sometimes, they go through growth spurts. So you might see 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks. They're growing so aggressively in the beginning. Everything is at a fast pace. So when they go through these little growth spurts, it's the all day buffet. They want to eat all day long. So if you just fed at 12 o'clock and it's 1 o'clock and they're still hungry again, you're going to have to feed them because the growth spurt is happening and they need that fuel. And then you'll see, like, in a couple days, oh, that diaper doesn't fit anymore, or their little sleeper's too short.
Right.
Yeah.
Good. All right. So what if you talked about a baby who maybe has a bottle preference, over hungry, whatever? What about the baby who's clearly wants to be at the breast, is trying to latch on, but they can't seem to get it, to hold it? So let's say they're not disorganized. Are there other reasons why a baby would be really fussy and struggle, or really upset at breast?
Beginning, if we can't get a baby on, normally there's, one of the first things that I do is I will check the baby orally. So we want to make sure everybody's heard of lip ties and tongue ties. They're a little bit more common in the boys than the girls. A lot of times, you can also see if a parent was not breastfed as a baby, and I'll ask them, were you breastfed as a baby? And when they say no, I'll ask them why, and they say, well, my mom had too much trouble. So frenulums, which is that little string underneath your tongue, it's goes right down the family line. So if you have somebody that has a tight frenulum who doesn't breastfeed their baby because that baby had that tight frenulum, and years ago they didn't do any clippings, they didn't take care of it because they didn't know. They just went right to formula. They didn't know the problem. So if you get that little piece clipped right away in the beginning, and then we do some suck exercises, that's going to help. But that's one of the first things that I do. I will check and make sure that we don't have a tongue tie. There's ways to assess it. One of the things a parent can do is if you rub your little finger underneath the tongue area and it feels like a thick speed bump, then you know that there's something going on. Also, babies will stick their tongues out. If they can't stick their tongue out, they're keeping their tongue way back, we know that there's something going on there and there's something tight. So they're the two things that, we'll assess right away in the beginning to make sure. Other babies have smaller openings. And again, positioning will help with the latch, with helping open up a little bit. So, we'll help them how to open a little bit wider. There's some suck exercises we can do, some training to help them open too. And babies will mimic us even from the very beginning. So if you open your mouth, they may open their mouths too. So I tell moms, open your mouth. open your mouth and let them see, and they'll start to realize. And then, in a few weeks, they'll just be latching themselves. They know how to do it themselves then. But they have to actually roll their tongue with your nipple all the way. If you feel with your tongue on the roof of your mouth, all the way back in the back of your hard palate, that's where they got to flip it. So, they got to learn this in the very beginning stages. So there's lots of tricks, the tip of the nipple and the top of the lip. And that's what we do to try and get that baby to open. And once that baby opens, you take baby to breast. And that's one of the things that we all do wrong, is we chase our breast. We try to put our breast into the baby's mouth. It's just natural. So you want to bring baby. Babies don't like when you touch them in the back of their heads. They want to only be held like more on the shoulder area to support their neck. But if you're going like this and pushing them, they're not going to eat. They're going to refuse to eat. So positioning, the way that you're holding them, there's all different things. And then we assess to make sure that there's also nothing else going on with the palate, anything orally. And then if mom has inverted nipples or flat nipples, there's crutches. We have something called a nipple shield now that's fabulous. So nipple shields can be used in order to help these babies too, as a little crutch.
For sure. Fortunately, there's a lot that can be done.
Yeah.
And even though you said that parents can sort of look for the tongue tie, is it fair to say that it's best to have it assessed by somebody? My understanding is there's lots of different points, some visible, some invisible, where the fascia can be tight. So if you're suspecting that, it's probably best to have someone who knows all those.
Your anterior, yes. And somebody who, knows the oral cavity will understand it a little bit more. There's pediatric dentists. There's a Dr. Bond that's amazing down by Temple, who does a laser. There's Dr. Smith, who's an ENT, and he does a clip. So he's very good too. So they're usually the two that I recommend, if a child needs it. Sometimes there might be a tightness, but the baby can latch and they don't pop on and pop off. The ones that pop on and pop off and are like, I call them munchers, like they really munch down, they're the ones that we got to get it done, or your milk supply is going to go, because they can't express they're not pulling the milk out of you, because they can't grab onto it, everything that we've tried.
I like to think of it as like when the attachment on your vacuum gets obstructed.
Yeah.
So you're like, it's not picking anything up. This suction isn't there, right?
Right.
So it can't do what it's supposed to.
Right. They just pop on and pop off. But if we have a baby that's on and you hear a little clicking, but they're on and they're getting 1-2 ounces of milk, that's okay, because they might stretch that and it might, just release itself, because it literally is a fingernail scratch. I mean, that's all you really have to do to open it up. So sometimes I'll say, let's not be so eager and run right over to Dr. Bond's office. Let's wait and see if we can,
It seems like it's an emerging science too. There's a lot of differing opinions about when it should be done and how it should be done. And
yeah. Earlier on is better than later. If you wait, babies are, they're funny. After 6 weeks, it's tough. It's tough to change them. I've had some moms that have relactated because they decided not to breastfeed and then they wanted to breastfeed. And sometimes we can get the supply back, but the longer you wait, the harder it is. And again, if you don't have a baby on a breast after 6 weeks and you try to put them on the breast and they've been given a bottle, it's really difficult to get them back on.
Okay.
It's really
better. Yeah. So I have a couple questions left. Anybody that's with us now, if you have one, go ahead and put it in the chat. But that brings us up to a really good question. Should breastfeeding hurt at first? And what if it still hurt later? What should it feel like? What are we being okay with? Or what is like a sign that someone needs to come to you or someone like you?
So that initial vacuum sometimes does hurt a little bit, especially if you have a really strong sucker. Mm-hmm. But it should hurt sometimes, or pinch, or feel a little funny for about 30 seconds. And then it should subside. If it doesn't subside and it continues, then we have got something going on. We got to change the latch. We have something orally going on. It could be anything. But you could be that you have a lot of moms, because the latch is not the way it should be in the beginning, their nipples get very sore or cracked. There's things that happen. We get plugged ducts. There's other things that happen. Babies have Sometimes the mom or the baby gets thrush, which is a yeast infection. That makes the nipple sore. There's all kinds of things that make you uncomfortable. If you're oversupply and you have engorgement, engorgement can make you very uncomfortable. So there's things that you can do. You can hand express a little bit out first before you put baby to breast. Sometimes moms are so engorged that we can't even get the babies on because there's nothing for them to latch onto. So if we hand express a little bit out, now this haka, which is so nice, you can even use that you don't have to bring out your whole pump. Do that just to express a little bit of milk out. Then we can get the baby on too.
So you would tell a mom if pain is persisting past that initial 30 seconds or, between feeds, all of that, they should definitely reach out to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and I have moms that have been breastfeeding and then they say to me, I need to, I need to see you again because it's hurting. So sometimes also too, in the very beginning, we're really watching and we're listening for the gulps and we're making sure the bottom lip is juicy and pouty and we're looking for the jaw movement. But then as time goes on, we're like, okay, good. They're growing. They're doing really well. We'll watch some TV. We'll do, we're doing something else, or we even walk around. We're talking on the phone and we're not really paying attention. And the latch can get a little shallow. The latch gets shallow, then they're just on the nip. And if they're just on the nipple and not the areola on the bottom, you're gonna get sore too. So there's also something called Raynaud's. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Oh, am I familiar with it?
So who have Raynaud's, which is when you go outside, your hands get real cold and painful. It happens to the nipples too. So you can have a vasospasm. So those moms, we need to cover you up and make you nice and warm and toasty. So you don't.
There's a fan of wool nursing pads in the microwave before and after. And there was a B supplement that helped me a lot, but it was one specific one I forget.
Okay.
But it was misdiagnosed as thrush at first and treated with gentian violet because apparently the symptoms are very
similar.
So I'm on a mission to say it shouldn't feel like that, and it might not be thrush.
Yeah. Vasospasms are very painful too. And normally, not always, but the nipple will be like blanched, really white looking. And that's when you can.
And mine would get blue, almost black.
Yeah. Yeah, you were.
Which is very alarming.
Yeah. Well, and again, your hands, the Raynaud's. I mean, as soon as, I actually on my medical history, that's one of the questions that I ask. Because it happens to women. So.
And my son's 11, so I don't nurse anymore, but I have to take a pill actually in the winter because of how I get it in my hands. I didn't know I had it until we were nursing. And it was a cascade. It was the oversupply that triggered clamping down that triggered.
Yes. And also forceful letdown causes sore nipples too. So,
so we did the block feeding, all the stuff from vasospasm. We had a journey.
You had,
Okay, so we'll probably wrap up soon. If anybody has questions, go ahead and pop them in the chat. This has been awesome, and everyone that joined from the beginning is still here, so that's a testament to the fact that it's been awesome, and that's a testament to you. Let's go back to the partner question, because I know this is hard for a lot of families, and I'm going to use the word partner, obviously, because not everybody's mom and dad. If a parent is exclusively breastfeeding or mostly breastfeeding, what are some ways that the partner can be more involved or can help that parent to be more successful with that? Because it's hard. Feeding takes up a long amount of time and it's frequent. So those partners often feel kind of helpless.
Yep.
And then resentment can develop too, right? So there's a lot of feelings in it. What can they do?
So after you're done with the breast, the partner can take baby, burp baby. And if you don't get a burp from a baby, but you get a little fart, it's the same thing. It's going to go north or south. It's all gas. And change the baby, swaddle the baby. I like the Velcro swaddles the best because, they're little Houdinis, these little babies. And the ones that they do, we wrap them in the hospital so tight, they can't get out. But it's so difficult. And if you haven't done thousands of them, they're going to be a little Houdini and get out. And we don't want that because if that little sheet gets over their nose, they don't know to take it off. So,
and it doesn't serve the purpose we need it to serve, right?
exactly. Yep, exactly. So that's how, one way they can help. The other way that they can help is once this baby is anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks, we always want somebody to give a bottle. And I always say, don't you give the bottle the first time, mom. Let somebody else in the family give the bottle. So again, we take, and 2 of my favorite bottles are the Dr. Brown, the gas, the anti-gas ones, and also the Comotomo, because it looks like a breast. So a lot of breastfed babies will like that bottle, the Comotomo bottle. The slow flow nipple. So what mom is going to do is, and I always tell moms, if you're going to pump first thing in the morning after the breastfeed, because that's when you're going to get the most milk. And when we're pumping, it's like watching boiling water. It's not going to happen. We don't want to look at it. So you get your nursing bra that is like Simple Wishes, a hands-free bra. You pump both of them at the same time for 15 minutes, but no more than 20. Should feel like it's pulling, but not pinching. And then that milk that you get, you're going to put it in the refrigerator, or you're going to leave it out. You'll leave it out for 5 hours, because the next feed, dad, partner, anybody can feed baby. Mm-hmm. And then when that feed, you miss that feed, then you're going to pump. So when somebody's feeding baby, you pump, and then you'll have that bottle again for the next day or whenever you want to give it again. There's the rule of the 5-5-5 that pediatricians go by, and we can keep the breast milk out for 5 hours, room temperature, 5 days in the refrigerator, or 5 months in the freezer. Now, the Surgeon General just changed it to 4-4-6, which is a little...
That ruins the whole thing.
So, I'm still sticking with the 5-5-5. With it too.
That's hilarious. Yeah, and I always love to say, from my doula background, what have you eaten today? Let me bring you something to eat. Here's a glass of water. We're not paying attention to ourselves necessarily, but obviously, we need to, and you get hungry and you get thirsty, you need to be hydrated. So, you can bring things to the breastfeeding parent and help us get comfortable. Pillow under the arm, behind the back, whatever. There's definitely things you can do to kind of be part of it. Yeah. Even if you're not the one, doing the feeding. And there's always that baby needs to be soothed after the feed, which takes probably just as long as the feed itself. And that does not have to be the nursing parent that does that part.
Yep, absolutely. And again, like we had talked earlier in the segment, sideline position in the middle of the night. Mom can stay in bed, keep her eyes closed. As soon as baby is latched on, I tell dads, partners, get a chair and don't go back in bed. Sit on that chair and watch, because we want to make sure that, because mom wants to keep her eyes closed, because we want her sleep to be as least interrupted as possible. And that's really helpful. And a lot of moms have said to me, oh my gosh, it just gave me so much more energy.
It took us a really long time, maybe because of our challenges. I was very discouraged when I first tried it, and it just was not working for us. And my support person said, just give it time. He's not there yet. He's not organized enough yet. Unfortunately, we didn't give up, because that became my favorite position. So that's what I would say to parents. If it's not working, it's probably too soon, but just try again. You're going to be trying it with a different baby the next week, and certainly the next month. Same with nursing in the carrier, which I felt like I had to master, because I had to take my son to work with me at 6 weeks. It was just so challenging, but once we got it, it made life 100 times easier. Yeah.
It was the only position for a few weeks I could do with my son on the left side. Right. I don't know what I would have done if I didn't, but back in those days, our babies fell asleep in bed with us, but you can't do that. You really cannot do that. You have to make sure that babies are back. And now Surgeon General wants babies to be in your room for, a year or even longer. So they even recommend breastfeeding 2 years or longer. But I say to any moms out there, it is a commitment. It's a beautiful thing. And however long you can do it is fabulous. And it's wonderful. And 1 drop of breast milk has billions of antibodies. So just 1 drop,
It's wonderful. Yeah. And I would always, there was a moment where I was like, what, am I really seriously going to keep going through this agony? But someone told me, I'm sure it was my LC, was like, just don't decide that right now. Get through this next feed and then decide. And I use that concept of let's get through this next feed and then I'll decide. And we made it to a year. And of course it became way easier than any of the other things once it finally became easy. But had I tried to decide for the long term, I don't know that we would have made it. So it helps to not look at the big picture.
Just take it one day or 1 week at a time, or whatever you feel comfortable with, or whatever works for you. Everybody's got different challenges and different situations, and whatever's the best. Some parents have a lot of time off, which is really nice, and some have to go right back. So it really depends on what is going to make you thrive and baby thrive, and that's the most important thing.
Awesome. Going back to work is a hot topic, but we're going to save that for a future live, how to prepare when you're breastfeeding going back to work. I do want to wrap this one up because everyone's been hanging for so long and I don't want to take too much of your time. But you are a wealth of knowledge and you make everyone very comfortable. There's a lot of love in the chat for you. So make sure you go back and look at the comments. Thank you everybody for saying such nice things about Linda and how helpful this was. So we super appreciate your time and the support that you give to parents and babies and families. And I would love to have you back again.
I would love
to talk about other things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much. Thanks to everyone who joined tonight and all summer long. And we will be back soon with different experts, different topics. We're going to do some daytime ones so you don't have to stay up late at night. And thanks for hanging with us. Enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you, Linda. Bye-bye.